Okay, so now we're going to start the practicing and the playing around with the tool and the lino. And you can make mistakes and on this section, and you know it's good to make mistakes because then you'll work out what not to do when you come to doing your project later on. Okay, so for this you're going to need two things. You're going to need a piece of practice lino and a tool. So if you bought a kit from me, you'll have two pieces of lino, one, two. One should be larger than the other, about 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. You don't need that, that's for your project later on, so just put that to one side. You will, however, need the smaller piece of lino, which is about 5 centimeters by about 10 centimeters. If you bought your materials separately, you didn't get a kit from me, that's fine. You just need the same things. You need a piece of lino, 10 centimeters square, ideally easy cut lino. I mean, this one's reversible, which is really good because if you do make a mistake, you've got another chance on the other side. And also for this practice session, we're going to be using both sides. So if you did buy your own lino, and it's not reversible, just make sure you've got one twice this size, 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. But hopefully you have managed to get a reversible piece of lino or two. The second thing you're going to need is a tool. And just quickly about tools, can you read SD, that brand on the handle there? And that's a French brand, and they're kind of middle of the road. They're not the cheapest, they're not the most expensive in terms of lino bits and pieces. They actually do everything from lino to trays to cutters to inks to kits. They do pretty much everything, and they're probably the most popular brand. I quite like them. I like the tools. There's lots of tools on the market that are very similar, but the way this works is you just unscrew the silver, which is just hand tighten. I'm going to try and show you this, and hopefully the camera won't go out of focus. But if you pull it out, it's got like a half moon shape on the end, and that just goes in to a half moon shaped hole. I don't want to mess with the focus too much. There we go. And these are all different ends and numbered. I have got some different ends to show you. So if you bought my kit, you'll get exactly this lino cutting tool with this end in, this number 2 end. As a beginner's class, I normally don't, in fact I don't ever, go into using the different ends. It just makes things a little bit overcomplicated when you're a beginner. And actually what I've found is this is a very generic, useful shaped end that can create just as many marks as with these other ends. Some of them are more rounded and fatter, some of them are thinner and more V-shaped, quite pointy. I find them a little bit tricky to use. They don't always do what I want them to do. And I don't find them that helpful, to be honest. But that's not to say that you wouldn't. But for this beginner's introductory course, we're just going to use this number 2 end, and that's what you've been provided in my kit. You can buy this lino cutting tool yourself. They're about a £5 or £6 last time I checked, from lots of different art suppliers, online or in store. So yeah, get yourself one of those. Just check for the number 2 on the back and put that in. Or you might have bought a lino cutting tool from a different brand, from a different store, in which case just go for something. I'm not sure if it's going to focus. Pull that out and you might see it. Can you see that there? It's kind of, compared to all the other tools, it's not too V-pointed, it's not too rounded, it's middle of the road, and it's not too big, it's not too small. So if you've got a range of tools, go for the one that's kind of middle in terms of size and shape, and you should be fine with that. Okay, so what's going to be important is not the end you use, it's the way you use the tool. Alright, so you've got your lino, you've got your tool. What we're going to be doing now is I'm going to show you 10 different cutting techniques, and you can either watch to the end without practicing, without picking up your tool, absorb the information, and then you can stop, rewind and come back, and then you can cut along with me, along with the tutorial. You might have a better idea of what's coming up, what you're doing. that's perfectly fine. Or you can just go ahead and cut with me right now if you want to. You've got your tool, you've got your lino. In which case I would just say, after each of the 10 exercises I'm just going to show you, if you're not done practicing that technique, just pause it, just hit pause, because I'm going to go at my pace, which is a bit of a mid pace. So you might want to go slower, I don't know, but let's see how we get on. A couple more points before we start. One is safety. I've not had anybody in a class cut themselves ever, touch wood, but obviously it is a sharp-ended tool, so the idea is if you don't put too much pressure on it, then if you do slip and you do unfortunately cut yourself, then you won't do too much damage. So you don't have to be hell for leather, really strongly cutting into it. Another thing to note is, this is the edge of my table here. I like to hold my lino to the edge of the table and always cut away. So if I'm wanting obviously to go in a different direction, turn the lino and not your hand. You don't want to be cutting towards your fingers in this direction. You're more likely to slip, at least at the beginning anyway, before you get confident with what you're doing. Okay, so I think that's it really. Just a very basic note then about holding the lino tool and how you go about holding it. Everybody holds it differently, and it's really down to how you feel comfortable. It's got this really nice rounded shape at the end. I like to hold it a bit like, I don't know, a scalpel. If I was cutting up some paper with a scalpel, or something like a cutting knife, what's it called, Stanley knife, something like that. But obviously I'm pushing forward instead of pulling away. I also like, as a technique, to just, I'm right-handed, with my left hand to just hold the nib there, and it just gives me a little bit extra control. I'm just going to do one line for you now and you can see. So, isn't that satisfying? There you go. And it's almost like a cheese grater or ice cream scoop type action. You're looking to scoop from the surface. So, and can you see the angle that I'm holding the tool at there? I mean, there should be some resistance from the lino. Obviously, you're wanting some resistance. If you're finding that it's really hard work and it doesn't feel comfortable, the best thing I can say to you is that perhaps your angle is too deep, like this. You're too much close to 45 degrees. You need to just level off your angle. You should be able to just scratch the surface. And another thing to note as well is you don't have to commit yourself to one continuous long line. You wouldn't necessarily do that with a pencil. You might, with a pencil, if you were drawing a line, you might draw a line with lots of broken smaller lines, which is, I like to use my lino tool like that. I find the lines are more interesting and less uniform, and a bit more like a drawn line. Okay, so I think we're ready. Are you ready to do the 10 exercises? So roughly you should fit about 5 of them on one side and 5 of them on the other, roughly. So, and you can just keep brushing your bits of lino to one side, the bits that are cut away. All right, so number 1 is obviously lines, and I'm just gonna, as my first exercise, I'm just gonna do a few just straight lines down the edge of the lino. Just gonna keep doing them. I'm gonna practice doing them quite close to each other. You can see I just slipped there. Have a play around with how much weight you want to put on it, or try and make, the lightest mark that you possibly can, and then make the heaviest mark that you possibly can. Okay, so we're talking about faint lines by going light, and then fat lines by going heavy, like this. So you've got that nice contrast between thin lines and fat lines. And then I want you to try something different. I want you to make one line, continuous line, but go faint and light, then go heavy without taking it off. Then go faint again, then go heavy, and keep doing that, alternating between faint and heavy. And what you'll come away with is a really nice, natural, broken line, a bit like tree bark. And in fact, this whole sort of grouping of lines is already looking very much organic, like tree bark. So have a practice, just straight lines. They can be broken, they can be continuous. Okay. So that's lines. That's exercise number 1. Exercise number 2 is circles. And for this, I want you to draw a circle which is going to be a biggish circle covering about half of this lino. So keep your fingers well away. I'll be really impressed if anyone can do a perfect circle. Just keep turning. Oops. Keep turning. Okay, keep going, keep going, keep going. There we go. Oh, see if I can get the ends to meet. Yes, I have. There we go. So that's a big circle. That was a little bit tricky. I mean, you can go where you've got maybe stop-start marks. You can go back over and you can chip away at them and make it as uniform as you want. I quite like them the way they are. Just a very natural carved line. Okay, so if we did, this is say a big circle, if we tried to do the smallest circle that we could possibly do, and I'm going to do that just to one side here. And it's not a dot, it is actually a circle, so it's an outer line with a solid middle, and I don't know whether I could go any smaller than this. But something like that, quite cute. You can have different sizes. Same technique, just spin the lino as you're going. Okay. And then, let's see, of that second circle, how about removing the inner? Be careful, it does want to slip. So just dig down and flick up. You might have to just pull it away with your fingers. And it doesn't matter what direction you do this in because it's going to just be removed. And just try and be as delicate and detailed as you can. And it doesn't matter if there's any bits left behind in the middle. They might print, you might be left with a tiny bit of a kind of a impression, but that's going to be characteristic of lino. So, you know, you want to keep all those little handcrafted characteristics. And finally, just going to do round here, I'm going to do a couple of, I don't know what you would call them, dots, divots. And I'm just digging it in and spinning it round and then flicking up. And see how small and delicate you could go. You'll be amazed at what prints. It picks up anything. Okay, just going to do one more there. There we go. And just rub it over with your finger to get rid of any leftover bits of lino, the cutaway bits, which are actually called burrs. It's the same as when you do woodcut or metal, you'll get curly bits that come away. They're called burrs, and you don't want those. They're bad. You don't want those at all when you come to printing. So as you go in, it's nice to make sure you've got no wispy ends left behind, and just run it over with your fingers. You know, it's a really tactile medium as well, so don't be scared to keep touching it with your fingers. Okay, so we've done circles. Next one is going to be waves. Oops. So for waves, they start to get a little bit more trickier. I think I'm going to do my waves down here. Waves is example number 3. So you've got actually 3 more things to fit on here, although one of them we could put inside the circle, but try and use half this space then to do your waves. I'm just going to do a wave like this. No rush, go slow. And you can just decide whether you want these waves to be long or tight and curly. This involves a little bit of concentration. You can have short waves. Hoping you can all see this. There we go. And just one last wave just down this side here. There we go. I'm tempted to put another one in here. Okay. So they're going to produce beautiful sort of hand-carved marks when it comes to printing. So that's wave. Crosshatch. Let's go for crosshatch. We'll do crosshatch down here. So, as faint as you can, almost like you're just stroking the surface. And you can be quite quick and quite gestural with this one. You don't have to be as controlled. It's nice to sometimes just lose control. Make it look a bit wishy-washy, a bit scruffy. So there'll be a different kind of an energy to it, to the other marks that you've made. And obviously crosshatch means going in the other direction. It's quite nice the way it is actually. So you have to be a bit tricky when you go over in this direction because it's a bit like going over tram lines. It's quite bumpy and it really wants to derail and go off in another direction, which is okay. Maybe you should let it do that and see what happens. It's up to you how many you do. You can do them heavy, you can do them light, and you'll come up with this really nice mark. So it's quite interesting what I was saying about lino being positive or negative, printed or not printed. There's no kind of grayscale in between. But cross-hatching, a bit like with shading, allows you to introduce almost an element of shade, but definitely an element of texture. Okay, just clean down your surface as you go. This is looking quite nice as it is actually. Okay, let's turn over. That's actually 4 techniques there, but one of them we can come back and do there later on. So we're on to now, just cleaning off where bits of lino have stuck to it. The squares, yes, we're going to draw squares. So one direction, spin, one direction, spin, and then close the gap. Quite like doing those. And they don't have to meet, and you don't have to do them in a continuous line. You could do flick, flick, just pull those ends off, and then join up this way. And I quite like that my lines are a little bit longer or a little bit shorter. They tell a little story of how they were made. And then we're going to just practice a bit of careful lino cutting by putting a cross in the middle. A little bit like you're creating a window frame with window panes. I'm going to put 2 inside this one. It's up to you. You can do any squares you want to. You don't have to copy this. The exercise is just squares. So maybe try and do the smallest square that you can possibly do. They don't have to be squares, they could be oblongs. And just practice doing them in different ways. Take your time and enjoy it. There's something really cathartic about this technique. It's quite satisfying, isn't it? Okay, so we've got a few squares here. I'm just going to put a line down the middle of that one because I can. Quite interesting, they're almost like parts of a warehouse. The geometric lines on the side of a warehouse or something like that, something industrial. Okay, so those are squares. The next thing we're going to do is V's like birds. Okay, did you all catch that? So we go up in one direction and be quite upwards moving when you do it. And this one, lots of these, and you could do them quite quickly. You can almost create a bit of a herringbone pattern. Do them inside each other, do them close together, do them far apart. Maybe do some of the V's facing in different directions is always fun. Be creative, explore, play. I'm actually just going to go ahead and do a zigzag line now. And if you come across any new marks that you just discover whilst we're playing around here, you know, by all means, you can share them with the Facebook group later on. There's hundreds and hundreds of marks that you can do. If we just go back to what I said earlier about not needing all the different tools. I mean, you could just Google, or on Pinterest, for anyone who goes on Pinterest, anything on the internet, lino mark making, you know, and there's hundreds of different marks. And once you've got this kind of toolbox of different marks that you'll always have like a library to be able to draw on. Do some more seagulls and then we'll move on to the next one. And you'll have favourite marks as well, the ones that you always come back to that you like. We're going to do my favourite mark in a minute. I'll show you the one that I like doing a lot. Okay, so that's V's like birds, and this is my favourite mark now, just flicks. Flicks, dots, dashes, feathery. Do some of them heavy. And some of them light, mix them up. Some of them long. You can brush as you go so that you can see what you're doing. Have them going in different directions. You know, some of them can be quick, some of them can be slow, some of them can be overlapping. I just think, to me, these marks just look like they've been carved in wood. It's your atypical carved mark where you can see every element of where it's dipped into the lino and come out the other side. I love them. Okay. Oops. Just spend a couple of minutes now just pulling away at all those burrs. I mean, it's not even something I can say to you, use a brush or anything like that. You just have to be careful to pick them off. Sometimes when you wash it, the soapy water, can't get that one off. The soapy water brings them away. And when we come to printing, I'll explain more, or I'll show you more why they're a problem. What happens is they do come away during the printing, and then they fix somewhere else on your lino, and they prevent, because they're sticking up from the surface, these little burrs I'm talking about, they prevent contact with the lino, with the paper, and not only do they leave a mark, but they leave a mark about a centimetre big around it, like a light bulb. So you definitely don't want them. I find it easier to get rid of them as I go along, rather than waiting until the end. If you're struggling with them, just bend your lino, it's pretty pliable, and they might come out. All those lovely marks, you want them to be shown. Bend your lino back. Already looking quite interesting. We've done quite a lot of marks so far. So, wiggly lines, we've got 3 more to go. So we can fit 2 on here, and then there's one I want to do on the back. So wiggly lines, exactly as you would expect. You should all be super pros at this now. These can be as kind of deep wiggles or shallow wiggles as you want. It's quite funny watching the curly bit of lino come away. You will find that wiggly line easier to do in a continuous line rather than trying to break it down, like the zigzag V. That's easier maybe to break it down, but this one definitely needs to be. Oh, the concentration, I can feel it from here. Slow and steady. There we go. And I'm just going to do one more. Let's practice that one more time. You should be onto your third wiggly line now. Here we go. That's it for wiggly lines. So the number 9 technique on here is what I call feather. Kind of is a feather. These are all quite abstract marks though. So I'm just going to do a mark like this. So it's got a slight bow in it, slight arc. And then this is the tricky technical bit, I guess. Take your time with this. Just do it again. If it cocks up, just do it somewhere else. And I'm just going to do another line right next to it. And already my lino tool wanted to go in a different direction. They might join, they might not. Try and keep it not joined, unjoined if you can, don't worry if they do. And then either side now, I'm going to flick. I'm going to do this quite quickly because I want it to be quite gestural. I don't want it to look like I've sat painstakingly considered it for a really long time. And some of them are longer, some of them shorter. There we go. It doesn't matter if they overlap or crisscross. Just clear off your lino tool as you go. You can see that's quite an interesting mark already. Okay. Okay, there we go. That's enough of that. As before, just bend it. To help you get rid of those burrs. Great. And then the last one now, we're going to cut out. It's cutting out a larger area. So far we've been making marks that if you printed this now, the areas that we've cut away would be white because that would be the colour of the paper underneath. So the areas that are the darker grey now, those are the bits that's printing. So you can see we've been cutting out what will be white. But actually what you can do is you could, let me just do it, it might be easier. If I was to draw a fish like this. And his tail. There we go. Mr. Fish. And then I'm going to give him an eye, just so that we know he's definitely a fish. Okay, so if I wanted this fish to print positive, then I'm going to cut away the background. Can you see? And I'm actually cutting it away in the direction of waves. So I could have chosen to cut this away top to bottom or starburst outwards from the fish. I could have chosen to do that, but I haven't. I've chosen to do it in waves, a little bit like the wavy marks we did before, but closer together. So you're cutting the majority of the dark grey away. But I'm still leaving some of it behind. I'd say you're cutting 95% of it away. And what will happen if you come to print this, just go to the edge, what will happen when you come to print this is you'll get almost like a wood grain texture or sea, like the texture of waves in the sea. And it's really beautiful, and absolutely when we do our projects everybody needs to be trying to incorporate some of this characteristic classic lino cut technique into the work when we come to doing the project. It doesn't take too long. It looks like it's going to be time consuming, but actually it's not, because you get in a bit of a rhythm. And I'm going to leave some of these larger areas. Just don't forget to put a wave into it. You don't want them straight. Well, you could have them straight, but there we go. I'll leave you to finish this off now. But these are the 10 practice techniques. By all means, pause the video if you've got some more Lino at home there. Practice them a bit more. As I said before, go onto Google, have a check out of other mark making techniques. But for now, this is the end of this section.